Welcome to Ceiling Shattering Tactics. We are here to elevate, innovate, and disrupt executive leadership by digging into the tactics and tools that have helped transformative entrepreneurs and leaders get to where they are today. Joining us is Sonali Nigam. Sonali, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm so excited to have you because I've actually been following your work for a while. And so just to let everybody know, Sonali is the founder and CEO of Pet Minded, a community for science-minded dog parents seeking science-backed insights, products, and services to give their pets a great life. And I absolutely love what you're doing. So thank you for being here. But I want to find out, what is your ceiling shattering tactic?
First of all, thank you for the kind introduction. And I will preface my tactic by mentioning that I think this works particularly well for introverts. I think it works for everyone, but I think it works particularly well for introverts because I am an introvert myself. So my ceiling shattering tactic over the past few years in building my business has been to use Twitter. I think a lot of us just associate Twitter with a lot of toxicity and political discourse and trolling and fighting. But something I've discovered about Twitter is that there are many micro communities that exist on that platform, and getting plugged into those communities can be incredibly, it can be great for collaborations. It can be great for building a personal brand. And it can also be actually great for building friendships. So in the last 20 months of the pandemic, I've actually leveraged Twitter for all of these things. And I will say it's been a lot of fun, which I was surprised by.
That's amazing, because I usually think of, okay, Facebook, you can kind of find communities. Instagram, I guess not so much. And Twitter, I wouldn't have even thought about that. So how do you know exactly what you want to go after in order to find those communities? And then I guess the second question would be, how do you find those communities?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say I think it starts with the topics that you're interested in. I think there's so many, what I discovered, there's people covering every topic on the planet on Twitter. And, some are great topics, others not so much. So I do think for our own sanity, it's good to pick out the topics that you care about. And, there are certain things you may not want to get involved in. So I know for a fact, I don't want to talk politics on Twitter. It's not the place to do it, and it's generally not civilized. But I knew that I wanted to learn about community building, and I wanted to connect with dog scientists. So those were my two main goals in joining Twitter and leveraging the platform. And so I did keyword research on both of those topics and identified some hashtags. And in that process, also found people who are very prolific on Twitter. They may not be well-known leaders, they're not being featured in the magazines yet, but they are talking on Twitter and they're talking about their research, they're talking about the work they do. And so those were my first two steps: keyword research and then starting to follow these accounts.
So you followed them. Do you contact them, say hello? Like, what do you do? Because then I know the next step would be to establish yourself as kind of an authority in that.
Yeah, I would say the first step is exactly to start commenting, to start engaging with people. So this can be someone who's an author, if they recently published a book. In my case, the topic was dog science. So there are a lot of people who've published books on this topic, and to many that's obscure, but I'm fascinated by that topic. And I would either express admiration, just be like, I love your book, or, it can be as simple as that, or actually engaging with them on topics that they care about. So if they're bringing up new research, or if they are expressing a new point of view, just commenting, expressing my own thoughts, like actually having a genuine discussion, not just for the sake of a conversation, but really like trying to get to know them. So I think that's a great first step. My second step was to actually DM people. So if I'd had a few great conversations with someone that I felt confident enough to say, hey, perhaps this person would be a great presenter for my community. I feel my community members would really connect with this scientist. They would love to learn about their research. I would DM them and say those exact things and say, if you have 20 minutes to come and talk to a group of nerdy dog parents who would love to learn more about you, would you consider it? And I will say 90% of the time, people wrote back very nice, thoughtful replies. Very few people ignored that DM. And in fact, out of that 90%, I would say a good number agreed to come and give talks to my community. And some of them created fabulous presentations to, talk to this group of dog parents because they were fascinated by this idea of people who were really digging their research, because they're used to presenting at academic conferences or, maybe doing book discussions. They don't really get to talk to the average dog parent. And so they viewed this as an opportunity to really connect with this new audience. And we've done actually in the past 20 months, we've done over 75 events. Yes.
Gosh. And how many would you say were contacts from Twitter?
I would say at least 35 came through Twitter. Because not only, that I'm meeting this scientist and getting to know them, and then I would always ask the follow-up and say, hey, who else do you think would be willing to do this type of conversation or have this conversation with my community? And then I would observe also in their conversations who they were engaging with, and I would give them a follow and engage with them. So it kind of became almost like this incestuous thing where I was watching who they had relationships with and trying to build my own relationship with them as well.
That's great. So do you have any tips because I know your profile, like your bio, which is not very long, is it's the first impression that people have of you. Do you have any tips for how people can kind of up that in order to kind of establish their authority, or like how people connect with them through Twitter?
Yeah, definitely. And I will say my profile has evolved, in the past 20 or so months. So when I started out, it simply stated who I was and my academic credentials, because I wanted to appear credible. So, it said Sonali, founder of Pet Minded, biomedical engineer, and something, right? And that's great, but, that's not telling people who I am. So I was encouraged to add community builder actually to that profile, because that is a big piece. I'm building a community and I am the leader of that community. And I think for community folks, that's actually, instant recognition. Okay, this is what she's trying to do. The second part of my bio now says, I believe, building a space for science-minded dog parents. And I think that's, again, a connection point for a dog scientist who's like, who is this woman DMing me or has been commenting on my posts? They can take a look at that and say, okay, this is a layperson, but they're doing SciComm, essentially. That's what it's considered in their field. So I think just making sure that your target audience understands who you are in that moment is important. My guess is, as I try to build my own personal brand and try to seek out pet parents on Twitter, it's going to evolve again, because those two phrases may not mean much to them at that time. So maybe it'll, be modified to helping science-minded dog parents, or learn doggy life skills, or, just something more approachable than what it is now. But I think it can evolve, but you just have to think about who your audience is. Who are you wanting to connect with for the next, say, 6 to 12 months, and really target it to them.
That's incredible. And, it's not that I'd given up on Twitter. It's that I just kind of stopped focusing on it. I've been focusing more on LinkedIn. Those who have listened to my podcast know that I'm actually pretty not a fan of Instagram, but Twitter, I've just been neutral on, right? And so this kind of makes me think I should go back, look at it, look at kind of what my goals are with it, and maybe revitalize my Twitter thread and my Twitter conversation. So I love it. Before we let you go, I want to turn it over to Anne, who is going to ask you a few questions for our Dear Future Disruptor segment.
Great.
Sonali, thank you so much for sharing your tactic with us. And honestly, I would have never thought to use Twitter to your advantage, because I am a very introverted person, so I find networking really hard. And so your tactic, I'll definitely give it a try. So I'm just going to ask you 2 quick questions, and you can feel free to answer them as in-depth as you'd like. So the first question is, what is one decision you made that has changed the trajectory of your life?
Ooh, I would say the most recent one was to give up my corporate career and to become an entrepreneur. I think it's helped me shatter a lot of misconceptions about myself. I've learned to hustle more. I've learned to push myself out of my comfort zone. So it's definitely whether or not entrepreneurship is going to be my long term. I think it's definitely disrupted my career because I'm always going to, if I go back to the corporate world, I'll always look for entrepreneurial roles at the very least.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you can learn a lot from working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so my last question is, what are some resources you would suggest for new leaders?
Oh, that's a great one. So I'm really big into community, as you can probably tell. And I do think, when you become a leader, there's a lot of mythology around, oh, it's lonely at the top. And I do not believe that one bit. I actually think finding like-minded people is probably one of the best things you can do for yourself, because you can learn from them. You can learn from your peers. You can observe how they're responding to situations. You can also be inspired by them. I love being in a community of entrepreneurial women, for example, because I'm inspired by their achievements. When someone raises a huge round of funding, I am really, really excited for them because I'm like, I can learn from this. So I think finding your community is, for me, the most important thing. And I would recommend everyone to give it a try.
Yeah, that's amazing. I always try to surround myself in communities of women also. It makes me feel excited, and I can find mentors who I can look up to. So thank you so much for sharing. That's all I have for you.
Yeah, of course.
Amazing. Thank you, Anne. So before we let you go, can you tell us something that you're working on right now that we can share with our community?
Yes. So if any of the folks who are listening are dog parents, as Tamara mentioned earlier, I have a community for science-minded dog parents, and we love to invite new people to join us. We host a ton of free events with scientists, but we also bring in a lot of pet experts to teach courses and run challenges. So I would welcome any of you to come find us. We are on Instagram, actually. I do spend a decent amount of time on Instagram, Tamara. Our handle is @PetMinded, so PETMINDED, and we post all our information there. So definitely check us out there, or you can look at our website, www.petminded.co. So that's it.
I love it. And I do feel like maybe Instagram is easier when you're posting pet pictures.
Yes, exactly. And I think there is a huge dog presence there already. And one of the goals of Pet Minded is to sort of bring new information to that community, that audience that already exists. So for us, I think it's a good place to be.
It really, it does sound like that. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to catch up with you again and have you on our podcast. And that is it for this week's Sealing Shattering Tactics. If you would like more insight into the toolboxes of influential female leaders, such as Sonali, follow Mind the Ceiling on social media and get the latest updates. See you all next week.